Tune in to Exposing Excellence with Roanoke Valley Leaders, a special summer series released on the Dear Business Coach podcast. Join your producer and host, me, Elizabeth Walker, and I sit down with a remarkable Roanoke Valley leader to uncover insights, successes, and strategies for achieving excellence in their field and yours. Don't miss out on these opportunities to learn from local leaders, elevate your own leadership style. Subscribe now and start exposing excellence with us. Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth, coming to you from the Walker Consulting Works studio. Find one thing to move your business forward today. With conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen, follow, and subscribe on social media, Dear Business Coach pages and groups. Dear Business Coach podcast. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. And don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today. Yeah. Alrighty, well, let's get started and make sure I don't forget to introduce you properly. Kris Simko with Pin the Gas podcast here in Roanoke, Virginia. Welcome to the Dear Business Coach podcast.
Thank you. It's an absolute honor to be here.
Yeah, well, and so I'm going to ask you a couple of personal questions, and but we'll start with some basics here and get to know you. And we've had a chance to get to know each other a little bit, but will you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name's Kris Simko. I'm Pin the Gas podcast. My nickname is The Show. It was actually given to me from my two former people on the podcast. One's still with me. He's just not on very much, but yeah. How's everybody doing today?
Awesome. Yeah, and so I met you, Kris, because I was looking for folks here in Roanoke, and we're kind of neighbors. I think that at some point we'll actually cross real paths. And
Yes,
so I invited you here today for a couple of reasons. And you know that this summer right now, you are a featured guest on Exposing Excellence with Roanoke Valley Leaders. And so this is a series focusing on team leaders and executives in the Roanoke Valley. And I asked you to speak with me today because you have inside access to people that you interview on your podcast. So I'll ask you to talk a little bit about how you get to know the folks and how you identify leaders in your field that get to come on your podcast. But tell me about Pin the Gas podcast and how you got started.
Yeah, good question. So I was actually the first guest on Pin the Gas podcast. I was friends with a guy named Andy Rowe. He lives in Florida. We have a racetrack called Virginia International Raceway. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. He told me he was going to drive up and come. I told him I'd meet him. Then he tells me that we had this conversation. He wanted to record it, and I was like, okay. And then he said, hey, man, we have a podcast. We do race reviews. It's called Pin the Gas. Would you be a guest to come on? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Would love to. And then since then, yeah, it just took off. So instead of just doing race reviews, I was like, hey, let's actually get the guys on here and the girls and actually interview the racers themselves. Um, and my whole thing was I didn't want to start from the top like everybody else does. I wanted to start at the bottom, the very beginning. The future is what I call of our sport, right? Give them a platform and a voice to come on and get a chance to tell their stories and yeah, get comfortable getting interviewed, because once they make it to the big leagues, it's always going to be microphones in your face and cameras. So yeah, I love to get everybody's story, how they got into road racing, whether it was their grandpa or their mom or their dad or whoever it was. And it's an absolute honor to be able to do what I do.
Well, you obviously have a passion for it. I know you said as much to me when we met and we spoke a week ago or so when we were preparing for this talk, and you shared with me that you do have a passion for giving the guests on your podcast a platform. And that is a very good place to start as far as getting to know you a little bit and what, in my opinion, makes someone a leader in their field like yourself is how you elevate others. And that starts with something within you as a professional, how you recognize, what makes someone a great guest? Why is it important for them to be on your show, for example?
Well, all the up and coming kids in our sport, most podcast platforms when it comes to motorcycle racing goes after the veterans of the sport, right? They rarely go after the up and comers or the people that just made it. So I wanted to be different than everybody else. I wanted to go after all the young and up and coming men and women getting into the sport, even people that's been in the sport for a long time that's never been invited on a podcast before. Give them an opportunity to tell their story, how they got in the sport, all the sacrifices they make just to be in our sport. It's very expensive, and yeah, I just wanted to have a platform to give everybody their own voice and their own opinion, and how they got there. I think it's good for the sport in general to have the future people coming on, not just people that they've heard 100,000 times on many podcasts before. Um, it's fresh, it's new. I get new people, new audience involved in the sport. Most of the time when I do go to the races, I usually invite people that's never been or never, they might have seen it on TV, but they've never been there personally, right? Once you're there, you feel the energy, the atmosphere. I introduce you to all the riders and the racers, and you get autographs and pictures. You're hooked by then, right? And now we have somebody else that's involved in the sport too, as well. Our sport's a small sport, especially compared to football and NASCAR and all that. So it's very important to give the future of our sport up and coming voices and a platform for them to like I said, be able to tell their story, give their sponsorships, the shout outs, and get them comfortable in front of the microphone. And usually what I do is when I reach out to people, it's usually via messenger, and I'll say, hey, I'm Simko from Pin to Gas Podcast. It'd be an absolute honor to have you on, and never been turned down, knock on wood, right? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And so what I do is, Elizabeth, is I set up pre-audio and video chat, just like what we're doing now, but this is being recorded. It's a non-recorded chat. So me and you get to sit down, we introduce each other, we talk, we go over things of the podcast, how it's going to work. My podcast is live, it's uncut, it's raw. I don't have any preset questions. The only preset question I have is at the very beginning, how did you get introduced to the wonderful world of two wheels that we all love? And then at the end of the interview, which a lot of the other podcasters don't do when it comes to motorcycle interviews, is I ask them personal questions like your favorite food, pineapple on pizza, your celebrity crush, stuff like that, right? Tell us something we don't know about you. That way, when people, the audience listens to the podcast, they connect to them on more personal level, not just the awesome road racer that they are, right?
Okay. Hi, my name's Elizabeth Walker, host and producer of the Dear Business Coach podcast and Walker Consulting Workshops. Join me live on October 18th for the Power of Laughter Masterclass with Clayton Fletcher. Now, I'm bringing this ad to you today on purpose because you will see an e-blast from the Jefferson Center for the Power of Laughter Masterclass with Clayton Fletcher. That's October 18th in the Fosdeck Hall. It is a full day seminar, and I'm hosting. If you would like a personal invite, please DM me on LinkedIn. You can also email me at dearbusinesscoachpodcast@gmail.com. So today I am coming to you from my home studio in Floyd, Virginia, telling you, remember to sign up for the Jefferson Center's email subscription list if you haven't already, and you will receive a reminder in your inbox, a dedicated email about the Power of Laughter. And it says, Elizabeth Walker presents the Power of Laughter Masterclass with Clayton Fletcher. Learn from an international professional stand-up comedian what all business people should know. What do comedians do on stage every night? How do we read the room? How do we learn what our audience is connecting with us around? And how can you learn how to do that in your everyday conversations build rapport with your customers and employees. So this is an event that is targeted for executives and team leaders who speak. If you are in the Roanoke Valley or surrounding area, October 18th starts at 11 a.m. You can reserve your seats right now at the Jefferson Center box office. Pick up your copy of the ROI of LOL. That's the book that Clayton's workshop is centered around. So the co-author is Steve Cody. You can find both Clayton Fletcher and Steve Cody on LinkedIn. So my name's Elizabeth Walker, host and producer of the Dear Business Coach podcast and Walker Consulting workshops. Please join me on October 18th and contact me now. I can help you reserve your seat or at the box office at the Jefferson Center in Roanoke, Virginia.
And if you connect with somebody that you listen to on a podcast, when you finally go to see them in real life at a race, you feel connected, right? And that's very important too. I just wanted to bring a different element to the podcast game that has been missing.
Well, that's actually a very good point. I was actually speaking this morning about putting when we listen to folks on a podcast, how it is a kind of an intimate experience for the listener, right? Even though I'm just talking to you right now and you get a chance to help facilitate the conversation, right? If I'm the guest. And yet the experience for the listener is pretty personal. So I get to hear your voice. I get to get some insights and feelings about who you might be as a person. And then when I go and find you on social, I can actually feel like I'm already connected with you when I find your content and watch you or listen, right? So that's a very nurturing point of view on your end as someone who's putting this show together, who's creating this experience for both the guest and the listener. And so you are specifically saying you're talking to the future of the sport, and we're here in the Southwest area of Virginia. It sounds like you have a lot of great experiences with colleagues and professionals in the field right here. I know your podcast isn't just for people in Virginia. So speaking to other professionals in this area, tell us what is it about Virginia that we love about this place? What is it about the world of motor racing that attracts people to our area to race and perform?
Well, it's Virginia is a pretty well located place as far as racetrack goes. There's so many racetracks within the area. You could travel 8 hours in circumference from Roanoke, Virginia, and hit many road races. So it makes it easy to travel and get to each one. Like Road Atlanta, for example, is in Georgia. It's 6 hours from here. New Jersey, it's 6 hours from here. Mid Ohio's like 6.5 hours from here. Then we got tracks in West Virginia, North Carolina. I mean, there's so many around the area. It makes it easily accessible to actually show up and go to a race. And it's fairly cheap. It's $80 for the weekend. You show up, pay your $20 parking pass, so $100. And that's for the entire weekend. And what I love about Moto America is that we have an open pit policy, which means that you can actually get up and close personal to every rider on the grid. 110%. So they'll have a big semi trailer with an awning coming out. They have the movie theater little string that goes across that actually separates you, but you're literally 5 or 6 feet away from the mechanics working on the super bikes or the super sports or whatever it is. And you see the riders and the data engineers, and you're right there up close and personal. That's one thing that Moto America does really well. As far as the audience goes, yeah, I'm worldwide. I interview people from Australia, Australia Superbike, British Superbikes, World Superbike, Moto America, Isle of Man TT, Northwest 200. I mean, everywhere. It's I don't I want to get the Americans more involved on the outskirts of motorcycle racing too, not just Moto America. You know, I want them to be educated in BSB. Of course, everybody watches MotoGP. That's the pinnacle of the sport. It's like F1 racing of motorcycles. So everybody knows about MotoGP, but not a lot of Americans watch British Superbikes, and they don't watch a lot of Isle of Man TT. You know, so I want to broaden their horizon and get them well educated on them, and that's why I reach out to them and get them on. on so they can tell their story too, and hopefully get I want to help the whole sport grow as a whole, not just Moto America, all motorcycle racing around the world. And that's also what kind of separates me from everybody else. I don't just stay in one genre of motorcycle racing. I reach out to everybody, which is important for the sport too. You know, it's like if you was in car racing, you'd be interested in all types of car racing, right? Not just NASCAR or Formula One. You'd be interested in how do you get to Formula One? Like what steps, right? Those are the guys that I go after. Is the people that is already in the sport and they made it, and the people that are coming up to get to our sport to make it. Um, and it helps it out as a whole.
Yeah, well, it's now before I ask you the next question, let's say really quick, I know the name of your podcast is Pin the Gas Podcast. I can watch you and connect with you almost everywhere, right? So tell me where I can find you and follow you.
I'm everywhere but Apple. I'm not on Apple right now. I'm working on it. So soon I will be on Apple. So Spotify, iHeart, Boomplay, Google, Samsung, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, pretty much everywhere but Apple. You can watch all my videos, all my podcasts. Some of them are audio and video, some of them is just audio. Depends on the platform you choose to watch it on.
Yeah. And so you said you are live streaming your interviews. So when I'm listening to a recording, that was, or listening to a podcast on, say, Spotify, that was actually a live experience. And so I've caught you on LinkedIn, for example. And so you stream to several channels at the same time. Is that right?
Yes, I stream to YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. It's all live. That way people can watch and they can actually interact. So they can actually ask questions. I'll pull the question up so the guest can see the question and I'll read it. Like Elizabeth, Cameron asked, how did you get started in podcasting yourself? You like, well, that's a great question, and then at the end I'll be like, thanks for the question. And then at the end of the podcast, I gave everybody that watched and a shout out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please go to all my social medias and like and subscribe and all that. I think it's very important when you podcast, and that's something else. Most podcasts you watch are pre-recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And it don't give the viewers a chance to come on and ask any questions. So that's why I use StreamYard, because StreamYard gives me that format to where I can go live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. That way you can watch on whatever platform you want to. When you ask a question, it pops up on my screen. Me and you get to see it. Okay. And then yeah, I'll pull you up and you come on. And what I've been doing lately too is I've been asking everybody that watches if you want to come on and ask the guest personally on camera a question, send me a message. I'll send them the link. They'll come on, they'll ask their question, and then we'll laugh and have a good time. And yeah, I'll kick them off and we'll go to the next guest. But I think it's important to do that because now the audience feels like they're actually part of something, not just, oh man, this podcast is coming out. I can't wait to listen to it. They're like, dude, did you hear me on Pin the Gas? Dude, they gave me a shout out and they actually asked my question, right? It makes them feel like they're part of something because they are part of something. And I tell everybody it's an absolute honor to meet everybody and for everybody to ask questions. It's something that's missing in a lot of podcasts, I think.
Well, it is a skill, and so you obviously are natural at it because it's not easy to even know that you're streaming to three different places and somehow keep focused that you're talking to one person. It is actually a mental a little bit of a mental exercise there to be able to do that and think about being able to naturally involve your audience at the same time. So like I said, you obviously are natural at it and have a passion for it. I going back to asking you about your guests and being someone who is focusing on giving folks a platform to speak and share space. Your interviews are 2 hours long, and you get into some very you go everywhere with your guests, right? So you get to hear some personal background, some um, stuff about growing up, and obviously with your introduction question, how did you get into the racing and into the world of motor racing and the wonderful world of two wheels, as you say. So, but one thing that that you told me in our prep for this conversation is that something happens that, you know, you enjoy watching with your guests who might have not ever been asked to be in an interview before or spoken like this before in an interview setting. So you're a part of that little bit of a leadership journey for someone who's learning how to speak and build their career, if you will. Um, so what happens for your guests who've maybe never been on a podcast before?
So when that's one of the questions I ask every guest before we go live for our initial sit down and video chat with each other to set it up. So basically, when I sit down with them, I just ask them like first thing I ask them is, have you ever done a podcast before? Most of them have not. And I'm like, don't be nervous. Yes, it is live, but don't be nervous. We're just that's why we're sitting down together right now. So we meet, we greet, and you're comfortable with me. Um, and it's a journey. I love getting new people on that's never had an interview before and watching them from the bottom progress throughout their career, right? It's like I'm part of their journey. And I stay friends with everybody. I go to a lot of road races, so I see all of them personally. It's all hugs and laughs and high fives. I don't consider myself a mentor. Um, I'm a very humble guy. I have a hard time saying I have fans out there. I just say it's true. It's when people ask for like pictures and stuff, it's very humbling. It's not something that I ever dreamed would happen. It's not something that I strived for as far as that goes, you know. I'm doing it for my whole love of the sport, trying to watch it grow, help all the young kids come up, give them, like I said, a platform to get comfortable talking on the microphone, getting a chance to tell their story. And I told you this, Elizabeth, at the end of the day, the main reason why I do this podcast is for my son, Rossi. That way, when I'm not here one day, he can always go back to YouTube and Spotify and iHeart and see his dad and laugh and the sport that I love so much that's given me my whole entire life that I want to give back to everybody else. And what an honor. What a best way to do it, right? Is by interviewing everybody and give them a platform and a voice to tell their story. And I've had guests that have come on that actually got sponsorship deals by being on my podcast. Again, it's an absolute honor. It's something that I never dreamed of would happen. It's something that I don't think about. I never dreamed that I would even be in the position I'm in as far as podcasting. I never realized how comfortable I am in front of a microphone and how I make my guests feel very comfortable. That's one compliment I get from everybody is when we get done, I stay on with them for about 5 minutes. Oh man, that was so much fun. And the first thing they say is, you make it easy. I mean, you make it so easy to talk to and so easy to interview. Like, and if you go back and you watch some of my podcasts, you tell the beginners that it's never been on because they're all nervous, they're shaking, or not shaking like this, but they're just twitchy and touching their face all the time, you know, all that stuff. And by the end, they're wide open, laughing and giggling and just putting off that energy, um, which is very important.
Yeah, well, so you're good at making people feel comfortable, and I mean, I can tell that right away. What is it that you think? Let's see here. Let me think about my question here. So when we're talking to folks in an interview situation, you know, you do have that chance to, like you said, ask some personal questions and ask some background. Um, but there is something there, you know, there is something about the folks that you interview. When I listen to your guests, I am, for someone, I don't, you know, I'm not in the racing world, I don't know anything about motorbike racings, and I realized that um each sport kind of has its unique sort of culture, right? And I don't know a lot about the racing world, but I can tell immediately just from jumping into a couple of your conversations that everybody here wants to see other people win. And you guys are kind of building camaraderie, right? So even as you're talking to a guest about their successes and their wins, and you're highlighting your guest, you guys, as you say, you want to bring the wonderful world of motor racing to the world, and bring, the outskirts maybe more into focus, and give the sport more exposure. I think that you do that naturally with your guests, just because you have a knack for bringing out what I think is the culture of your sport. Right, you guys really are. You want everybody to come to the sport to have the most fun for everybody, and so something about talking about someone's wins, someone's awards, someone's records, it becomes a stepping stone for the next person. You encourage the competitive nature is to make everybody better. So am I kind of picking up on that? Because I don't know anybody in your field, but that's what I get from your podcast.
Yeah, I'm friends with so many people in the paddock. It's I want everybody to give their 100% best, and to be able to fulfill all their dreams. And I always talk about, not only do I talk about their success, but also like to talk about your failure, right? Because it's very important. And how do you deal with that? Stressful situation. You show up at the racetrack, nothing's going your way, the bike's giving you no feeling, the front don't give you no feeling, the rear's not giving you any traction, you're just lost, right? How do you mentally get through that, to focus, to get back on that bike, to go out there and still push it at 100%? Because our sport it's a very dangerous sport too. And I make the guests deep tell me, what they do to prepare mentally, physically, how do they get over those mental challenges when it comes to road racing, because it's all a mental game, just like most sports in the world. It's 80% here, the other 20% is talent. um Everything's the same. It's very important that when I ask the guests those questions, because then you get to know uh how they handle certain situations. And I always like to say, like, when I first started podcasting, man, I was so nervous, right? It was like, oh my God, I hope I don't sound bad. I hope I don't do this. But then what helps me deal with it on day-to-day basis, and road racers too, is always tell them, focus on where you're good at on the track, right? Not where you're sacrificing, not where you're really struggling at, but if you focus on the areas that you're good at, then all that bad negative stuff gets pushed back in your head, and you're not thinking about that anymore, right? And a happy rider is a fast rider. So if a rider's comfortable and they're happy, they're going to be naturally be fast. um Yeah, I love to ask questions like that. I love, that's my favorite part of the interview, Elizabeth, is all the personal questions, the low down dirt. It's again, it's very important to get to know people personally on a personal level. When you're in our sport, Elizabeth, it's such a small circus. It is what I call it. It's a beautiful circus. It's small. It's very tiny. Everybody knows everybody. Um, but once you're in the circus, it's a beautiful place inside and outside, right? It's beautiful because now I know a lot of people. I now that I've been friends with a lot of them, when I go to the races, I step back a lot of times and I just watch them, whether they're struggling on the track, and I love to see how they deal with it in person, not just by sitting down doing an interview, right? And then that way, the next time I get them back on the podcast for part 2 or 3, whichever it is, um, we're connected even more. Like, hey man, when I seen you in the pit at Road Atlanta, I noticed when you had a bad weekend, you were struggling here, but I noticed you did this and this and this. Why do you do that? Stuff like that. Um, and it makes them think. It makes them tell their true feelings, and be their true self. And that's what I want out of everybody. I think it's very important, not just a prescripts, certain questions that I'm going to ask you, and then I basically know what you're going to say with your answer, right? This is different for me, Elizabeth. I'm not used to getting asked the questions. I'm used to asking all the questions.
Right, right. So speaking of personal questions, I know that you shared with me that you're a busy guy, right? You have lots of things going on outside of the podcast. Anything you want to share about what's the day-to-day life like for Simcoe?
So I work Monday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. I'm off Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sometimes I do podcasts 5 days a week. Sometimes it's two or 1 day a week. Yeah, it's a full-time job, podcast full-time job, work full-time job. I'm married to the most amazing woman in the world. I got the best son ever, Hayden Rossi. Yes, I named him after two of my favorite road racers. And honestly, if I didn't have the support system that I do from them, it would be very hard for me to do what I do. It's a juggling act, working full time, and Elizabeth, podcasting is a full time job. Um, I don't get paid to do it. That's the goal. One day I would love to be able to do this full time and be able to provide for my family and still go to the races and do live interviews and stuff like that too as well. But yeah, I'm busy. I don't slow down until it's time to go to bed, basically. I feel like our life's so short, right? We only get a short period of time here. So I make the best of it. And I tell everybody this, Elizabeth, none of us are strangers. We're only friends that haven't met yet. Um, another thing I like to tell everybody is that from day to day, our lives get so busy. I challenge everybody just for whether it's 30 seconds or 2 minutes out of every day that you wake up, stop and enjoy the moment, whatever moment it is. Like right now, as I'm doing this, I'm really enjoying this moment, right? Of course, once this is done, I'll go out there and I'll cook dinner and feed my dog and do all that. And then, dad mode kicks in, husband mode kicks in. It's podcasting is a way for me to, I don't want to say this, connect with people around the world. I'm such a fan of the sport, as you can tell from the background of all the stuff in my room. I grew up watching road racing. I can't even tell you how many road races I've been to. Um, and to be able to give back and be able to connect to the people that I'm such a fan of, whether they're new to the sport or they've been in the sport 10 years. It's uh it's an absolute honor, and it just takes me away from my day-to-day stress of life because everybody has that stress of life, right? Um so it's a good way for me to, it's the best way. If I'm not riding myself on my motorcycle, then there's no place I'd rather be than sitting down doing interviews with all the amazing people of road racing.
Yeah, yeah, getting to meet people is the coolest part about sitting down in front of the camera and then having it documented, like you said about having a record or a catalog or where your son can find you and see material and see your work. I feel the same way. There's something really cool about that. What do you want to share with me? When do you get to ride, and what's your racing story?
So I grew up in the military. My dad was a fighter pilot. So we constantly moved. I wanted a dirt bike. My dad was like, "Yeah, I'll get you one." Of course, my mom was like, we ain't getting him no dirt bike." So going from base to base, I always made friends with the kids that, guess what, had dirt bikes, right? So I grew up riding with them. And then when I was in high school, uh, when it was 16, you get your driver's license. I got my motorcycle license and my driver's license, and I bought a motorcycle. I didn't buy a car. And my mom was like, "What are you gonna do when it rains?" I'm gonna get wet. What are you gonna do when it's cold? I'll dress warm, right? Like this is my path. This is what I want to do. So I've been riding since I was 16. Well, street bike since I was 16. Went to Phoenix, Arizona. Went to Motorcycle Mechanics Institute, which is a school you go to they show you how to work on motorcycles, so you can be a motorcycle mechanic. And while I was out there, I met a bunch of proper mega. Yeah, I know you hear me say that all the time. Proper
Uh-huh.
mega people. And they're the ones that actually said, "Hey, let's go do a track day." And for my first track day in 1999, um, I went and did that. I did several track days, then got my road racing license, did two full seasons, and road racing is expensive. It's super, super expensive. If it's so I stopped road racing and I just do track days. I only do a couple a year now, because I'm just so busy. I just don't ever really have the time take a weekend to go to the track. I'd rather take a weekend to go to the track and support my friends in Moto America, and or I fly to Europe and go to British Superbikes and support all my friends out there too. So um I do ride, but just not as much as I want to, right? It's yeah, so
Right.
one day.
Well, this is a perfect place for you to be. It's just fine with you.
It is.
And do you do you want to share as well what's coming up for anything for you and your network this summer? This would be like Plug City time, right? Any kind of sponsors that you have on your show or businesses that specific to your show you would like to point people to, and what's coming up? Any events we should look out for this summer?
Yeah, I'm going to Mid Ohio. Moto America will be at Mid Ohio. It's August 14th through the 16th. Obviously it's in Ohio. And then I'm going there, and then I'm going to the last race of the year, which is in New Jersey at New Jersey Motor Park. Um, and then I mean, podcasts pretty coming up. I'm pretty much booked up through August. I'm filling in for September now. Um, as far as my sponsors go, yes, absolutely. I got several. So first is bisontrack.com. They are a manufacturer of custom motorcycle suits. And I tell everybody, why buy an off the rack suit that's not going to fit you 100% perfect? And it actually, when you have a suit that don't fit you perfect, it hinders your riding and it causes like arm pump and all kinds of stuff because you can't freely move on the motorcycles. It's not like a car. Elizabeth, when you drive your car, and if you go sit in the passenger seat, it's not going to affect the handling. But when you're sitting on that motorcycle, you only got two wheels. Every input you put in totally affects the handling of a motorcycle. So you need something that's going to fit you perfectly so you can get all those free movements in to get the best out of you and the bike and be as safe as possible. So bisontrack.com, they're a sponsor of mine. I have a sponsor out there in the UK. They're called the clothingking.co.uk. They make all my Pendergast merch for out there. People in the UK, you can get beanie hats, t-shirts, soft shell jackets, the whole 9 yards. I have a company out here called Flying Eyes Optics. They make these sunglasses that are made and assembled in Austin, Texas, Texas. They're actually made to wear up underneath your motorcycle helmet. So Elizabeth,
Oh.
you've never had a motorcycle helmet on, right? So if you put a motorcycle helmet on, most of them come with clear visors. When it's sunny outside, it's bright, you're naturally going to put a pair of sunglasses on. When you put a pair of sunglasses on, whether it's Oakley, Maui Jin, whatever it is, right? The arms on them are super stiff. So what it does is it creates a pressure point underneath your helmet. It causes headaches, and I wear contacts and because your
I do
contacts go
too.
blurry and all that, right? So these Flying Eyes optics, they're made specifically to wear up underneath. I mean, you see how the arms bend on these things and they pop right back. So and
Yeah.
they're super light, and I don't even notice I wear them half the time. Matter of fact, everybody that I see, I'm like, here, try these sunglasses. Like, oh my God, these are absolutely amazing. Cool. I got a website and a discount code for you to go get you a pair, right? Um, them. And then I got a team called RD Racing out there in the UK. They're a big supporter of mine. His kid Jake Marsh races Club 45 out there in the British super sport class. Um, who else? I got Chef Eats. Chef Eats, he makes the most amazing food for people on the go, right? So you show up to a road race, you bring in a grill, you bring in charcoal, your gas, and all this stuff to cook, right? Well, Chef Eats has pre-packaged meals. You put them in a microwave for 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and they're the most amazing meals you can get microwave. You get, I've tried uh Fresh and Lean, and you see what's the other one, the big one that you see all the time, Hello Fresh, right? Of course, I bought
Yeah.
Hello Fresh, and you get them, and they're good. Don't get me wrong, but Chef Eats is far superior in quality and taste goes. And not only that, is if you're an athlete, he caters to whatever diet you're on athlete wise. If you're just a regular consumer, you can get breakfast, lunch, dinner. Simply amazing. So chefeats.com. I have another sponsor, Vet2 Track. His name is Jim Whitman. He works with a lot of the veterans that deal with PSTD. He gets them involved in the sport. He brings them to the track, shows them the motorcycles. Sometimes they help on a real race team, which is an absolute amazing program he's got. Um, I got SFL Mini GP, which is in South Florida. They are the best racing organization here in America when it comes to up and coming racers getting involved in our sport. That's where Avery the Lap
Okay.
Slayer Dreyer come from. He's the Moto Junior Cup champion last year. He comes from South Florida. His sister Ella, Isaac Woodworth, Andrew Way. I mean, the list goes on and on. So if you guys get a chance, go to South Florida gp.com. They're in South Florida. Sign up. Whether you have a young kid that you want to put on a bike just to learn how to ride, or you're 40, 50, 60 years old that always dreamed of dragging your knee yourself, look no further than an SFL Mini GP. And the cool thing about them is, Elizabeth, is it's a no hassle program, meaning no excuses. And what I mean by that is you don't have to say, well, in order to get on a track, you got to have your own leather suit, full suit, boots, gloves, back protector, chest protector, helmet, the whole nine, right?
Okay.
SFL Mini GP, you don't have to have any of that. You sign up, you show up, they provide everything for you, even the motorcycle.
Hmm.
So yeah, they're an absolutely amazing program. Another sponsor I got is BSB Barmy Armory. They're out there in the UK too. He has a rider support fund program that he does. So he goes around to BSB and gets like riders to sign like visors and boots and knee sliders and all that cool stuff. And they auction them off and all that. It's a nonprofit fund. So all that money that he gets, up and coming riders that need a listen, the gear is expensive. You know, you just pay $500-$600 for a pair of just road racing boots. So you don't have the money for them. You hit up BSB Barmy Army. They'll get you a brand new pair of boots, which is an absolutely amazing program that they have. It's yeah, 64-degree racing. They make undersuits. I got a full custom undersuit hanging up here on my wall. Undersuit is something that when you put on a leather suit, Elizabeth, you want that undersuit. Trust me, because it's easier to slide in and out of than putting it on over just your skin because you're hot, you're sweaty, you need somebody to help
Mhm.
you do it. With the undersuit, you don't. You just slide it on, zip it up, you're good to go. When you're done, you just take it right back off, and it's good. Plus, it's a compression suit, so it
Mhm.
keeps you cool, it keeps you warm, it's all that good stuff. So yeah, those are basically all my sponsors. I don't get paid for any of them. Um, I, I don't. I know all of them personally, and they're within the motorcycle business, and I just want to see them grow and get to whatever level their dreams are too. Um, so it's yeah. Hopefully one day I'll get paid to do this. So it's something that I don't think about. I just got to be honest. I don't. I feel like if I just sought after sponsorship, trying to get paid, then I'm taking away my true self from the podcast. If that makes sense, right? I see it as I just want to stay focused, doing what I'm doing, do the way I love to do it, do me and how I want to do it, and everything that comes along with it is just a bonus. So I do get free stuff. Don't get me wrong, okay? Um, but I just don't get a paycheck.
Well, that yeah, well, and the relationships that you're building and the sponsors that you have are building a credibility for your show and giving the platform credibility for your guests. So it all makes sense to me, and certainly, the money, as they say, will follow. So I think that I think that anybody who is trying to get exposure would be, I would think that being on Pin the Gas podcast would be one of the top things to highlight on your resume, if you will, because I think just where the way that you distribute and how you put so much attention and professionalism into each episode, into each interview. I mean, it does feel a little bit like a network show. I mean, it does feel like, I wouldn't be able to tell, that you were basically doing this 100%, as you say, free. So I'm highly impressed. But so when can we, let's see here, if I want to catch you next time, is there a schedule? And I look out for you on Pin the Gas podcast. and you're every week. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. So if you go to my Facebook page, I have Pin the Gas Facebook page and my Kris Simko. It'll show up on both. All my events pop up there. So with StreamYard, this is what I also love about StreamYard is when I create my event on StreamYard, it'll ask me, do I want to go to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn? I used to do it on Instagram too. I stopped doing live on Instagram just because they don't save the video. So
Hmm.
once it's done, it's gone. Like I can't even
Right.
go back and find. So I'm like, I don't want to waste the time and energy doing that, right? So the cool thing is where I was getting at is StreamYard. It allows me to
Mhm.
do Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And then when I go in StreamYard and I create the event, it automatically pops up on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Say, hey, Kris Simko is going live with Braden Elliott, which is a BSB superbike racer. Catch us at Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So if you just go to my Facebook page, all my events that I have coming up, you'll see pop up. Currently just got done with my last one. So when we get done with this, I'm creating a couple more because I do got some coming up this week. I
Okay.
try to schedule them at least 2 days out before, depending on where they're at in the world, right, Elizabeth? So if I get somebody
Hmm.
coming on from Australia, they're
Hmm.
16 hours ahead of us, so it's the next day for them. Um, so that's a little tricky to schedule. But again, if you just go to my Facebook or YouTube, Pin the Gas, yeah, you'll see all my upcoming events, what time it is, and who I'm sitting down with to have a proper mega chat with.
Awesome. Yeah. And jump in, ask questions, and get involved, and you can meet
Yep.
and talk to Simcoe and his guest live.
Absolutely, and I also have a fantasy league. So if anybody goes to
Oh,
MotoGP.com and you go to fantasy leagues, right, it's all free. You join the fantasy league, and then you go to search leagues, put in Pin the Gas podcast. My league will pop up. You join my league at the end of the season. Whoever wins the league gets a surprise from Pin the Gas podcast.
okay. Okay. Well, awesome.
So
Well, so I was calling you Kris, but you go Simcoe. Thank you so much for bringing Pin the Gas podcast to the Dear Business Coach podcast. And it's been an honor to speak with you today.
absolutely. The honor's all mine. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for joining me today. My name's Elizabeth, coming to you from the Walker Consulting Works studio in Floyd, Virginia. This has been an episode of Dear Business Coach.